The morning I found the letter, I was elbow deep in his closet, trying to decide what to do with 43 years of a man's life. My husband had been gone for 11 days. 11 days of casseroles left on the porch, 11 days of the phone ringing and me not answering, 11 days of sleeping on my side of the bed because crossing to his side felt like trespassing on something sacred, or something I wasn't sure was mine anymore. I wasn't looking for anything. That's what I want you to understand. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't the kind of wife who went through pockets or checked phones. I trusted my husband the way you trust the floor beneath your feet, without thinking about it because you've never once fallen through. His name was Gerald. Gerald Martin Ashford. He wore the same brand of wool socks for 30 years and took his coffee with exactly 1 sugar and always left his keys on the hook by the door. He was predictable in the way good men are predictable. Steady, safe, or so I thought. The letter was in a shoebox on the top shelf. Not hidden exactly. Just sitting there among other shoeboxes, none of which actually contained shoes. Gerald kept everything in shoeboxes. Old tax returns, instruction manuals for appliances we hadn't owned in 20 years, birthday cards tied with rubber bands. I had reached for one box and pulled down another by accident, and the lid came off when it hit the floor, and there it was. An envelope, my husband's handwriting on the front. A name I had never seen before. Patricia Elaine Collier. I stood there in my bedroom slippers on the carpet we'd chosen together at a store in Raleigh in 1987, holding an envelope addressed to a woman I had never heard of, and something cold moved through me. Something that wasn't grief. Grief I already knew. This was something else entirely. I almost put it back. I want to be honest about that. I stood there for a long moment, and I almost slid it under the lid and pushed the box back onto the shelf and gone downstairs and made myself a cup of tea, and never thought about it again. But I had already seen her name, and I had already felt that cold thing move through me. And somewhere deep down, the part of me that had survived 67 years of living knew that once you see something, you cannot choose to unsee it. I opened the envelope. It was 4 pages, handwritten, dated 8 months before Gerald died. Before the diagnosis, before any of us knew, he had written it when he was still healthy, still driving himself to the hardware store on Saturdays, still complaining about the neighbor's dog. He had written it in full knowledge and full intention. I won't tell you everything the letter said. Some of it is mine to keep, but I will tell you this. Gerald had known Patricia Elaine Collier for 16 years. He had met her at a conference in Charlotte in the spring of 2008. I remembered that trip. I had packed his bag. I had called him the second night to tell him the rose bush by the mailbox had bloomed, and what began there had never ended. He called her his person. That's the word he used. My person. He wrote that she understood parts of him he'd never been able to show at home. He wrote that he was sorry for the pain this would cause, but that he needed her to know, after everything, that she had mattered most. She had mattered most. She had mattered most. I read it twice. Then I sat down on the edge of the bed, his side, without even noticing, and I held the letter in my lap and I looked out the window at the oak tree in the backyard, the one our son had carved his initials into when he was 9 years old, and I breathed. Just breathed. I didn't cry. I think I was too far past crying for tears to be of any use. 16 years. Patricia Elaine Collier had existed in my marriage for 16 years. Our 25th anniversary was in those 16 years. Our grandson being born was in those 16 years. The summer we renovated the kitchen and argued for 3 weeks about cabinet hardware was in those 16 years. All of it, every ordinary Tuesday, every holiday, every quiet Sunday morning. All of it had been happening alongside something I didn't know existed. I thought about the conference in Charlotte. I had packed his bag. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I put the envelope in my cardigan pocket. against my chest. Then I went downstairs and I made that cup of tea after all, because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. I was standing at the kitchen window, watching a cardinal at the bird feeder when my daughter-in-law called to check on me. She asked how I was holding up. I said I was fine. She said she and my son would come by for dinner Friday. I said that sounded nice. We talked for 4 minutes about nothing, the way people do when they don't know what to say, and then we hung up. Friday was 3 days away. I spent those 3 days in a particular kind of quiet. I went through the motions. I ate, I slept a little, I watered the plants, I replied to the sympathy cards that had been accumulating on the kitchen table, but underneath all of it, that cold thing was still moving through me, slow and thorough, like floodwater finding every crack. I did what I always do when I need to understand something. I made a list. Not on paper, in my head, the way I've always organized my thoughts. What I knew, what I didn't know, what I didn't know, what I needed to find out. What I knew. Gerald had loved another woman for 16 years. He had written her a letter. He had kept it in a shoebox in our bedroom closet, which told me he hadn't sent it, which told me something had happened before he could. What I didn't know, whether Patricia Elaine Collier knew he was dead, whether she had tried to contact him, whether there was more in those shoeboxes that I hadn't found yet. I went back upstairs that second afternoon, and I looked through every single box on that shelf. I was methodical about it. I stacked them on the bed and opened them one by one and went through them carefully, the way you do when you're no longer afraid of what you might find, because you already found the worst thing. In the third box from the left, there was a phone. A small, inexpensive phone, prepaid, with a cracked screen. The battery was dead. I found a charger in the same box that fit it. I plugged it in and sat on the edge of the bed and waited. When it turned on, there were 23 unread messages, all from the same contact, saved simply as P. I wrote the rules, broke them, and made you beg to understand. Patricia had been writing since Gerald went quiet. The messages started worried, then frantic, then quieter, more resigned. The last one was from 2 days after his funeral. A funeral she had not attended. A death she had apparently read about in an obituary she found while searching his name. Her last message said only, "I didn't know until now. I'm so sorry, Gerald. I hope you weren't alone." He had not been alone. He had been surrounded by his family. His wife of 43 years had held his hand. His children had been in the hall. His grandchildren had drawn pictures that were taped to the wall of his hospital room. She didn't know any of that. She had been somewhere else entirely, waiting for a message that was never going to come. I sat with that for a long time. I thought I would feel anger toward her. I had been waiting for it. That clean and righteous fury you hear about. The kind that sharpens everything and tells you exactly who you are and who wronged you. But what I felt was more complicated than anger. I felt something I didn't have a word for. A grief that bent in 2 directions at once. For what I had lost, and for what I was only now understanding, I'd never quite had. Friday came. My son Marcus and his wife arrived at 6 with a pot of soup and a loaf of sourdough bread, and my 2 grandchildren, who were loud and beautiful and needed no one to explain the world to them yet. We ate dinner at the kitchen table and I watched Marcus refill everyone's water glasses without being asked, the way his father used to do, and I felt a pain so specific and so strange that I had to press my lips together until it passed. After the children were settled in the living room with their tablets, Marcus and his wife and I sat at the table with our decaf, and I reached into my cardigan pocket and I set the letter down on the table between us. Marcus looked at it, then he looked at me. "Mom," he said. That was all. Just Mom. And in that single word, in the way his face did not register surprise, in the way he did not reach for the letter to ask what it was, I understood. My son knew. I looked at him across the table, across the soup bowls and the breadcrumbs and 40 years of being his mother, and I said, "How long?" He didn't answer right away. His wife looked at her coffee cup. I noticed she was looking at her coffee cup. "Marcus," I said, "how long did you know about her?" He was quiet for a moment that stretched out between us like a road I couldn't see the end of. Then he said, "A few years. A few years." "More than a few," I said. It wasn't a question. He closed his eyes briefly. "Dad told me when I turned 40. He said he needed someone to know. He said it wasn't serious." He stopped. Started again. "He said it was complicated. Complicated. 16 years, a prepaid phone, a 4-page handwritten letter, and the word he chose was complicated." "I wanted to tell you," Marcus said. "You have to know that I wanted to tell you. But you didn't." "He asked me not to. He said it would destroy the family. He said it would destroy the family," I repeated, slowly, tasting each word. I thought about what that meant. Whose family? Which family was the one worth protecting? I didn't raise my voice. I want you to know that. I have never been a woman who raises her voice when she is truly angry, because when I am truly angry, I go very still, and the stillness is enough. Marcus knew it. He'd known it since he was 12 years old. I picked up the letter and I put it back in my pocket. "I need you to go home tonight," I said. "Both of you. Take the children. I'm all right. I just need to be alone." "Mom, I love you," I said. "I mean that completely. I love you," I said. "I mean that completely. I love you and I am not finished being your mother. But I need you to go home tonight, and I need a little time, and I need you to understand that what happened here wasn't only your father's choice. You made a choice too." He started to cry then, quietly, the way men who didn't learn how to cry properly do it. Just their eyes, the rest of their face trying to hold still. I watched my son cry at my kitchen table and I felt all of the love I have ever felt for him, unchanged and unbroken, alongside something new, the knowledge that love and trust are not the same thing, and I had confused them for a very long time. They left by 8. I washed the dishes. I put away the leftover soup. I wiped down the counters. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a pad of paper and a pen, and I wrote down everything I needed to know about my own life. The house. In both our names, I checked the deed within a week, speaking with a lawyer who confirmed what I needed, confirmed. Gerald's retirement accounts, the savings, the small life insurance policy. I went through everything with a clarity I hadn't expected to feel, a steadiness that surprised me. People ask how you go on after something like this, how you keep waking up and making coffee and watching the birds at the feeder when the ground beneath you has turned out to be something other than solid. I don't have a tidy answer for that. I'm not sure anyone does. What I will tell you is what I did. I wrote Patricia Elaine Collier a letter. I found her address. It wasn't difficult. Gerald, bless his impractical heart, had written it inside the front cover of a small address book in the same shoebox as the phone. I sat at my kitchen table on a Thursday afternoon in January with a cup of tea going cold beside me, and I wrote to her. I didn't write in anger. Anger had come and gone by then, quiet and private, in the middle of a Tuesday night when I had stood in the backyard in my coat at 2 in the morning and said some things out loud to the dark that I will not repeat here. That anger was mine. I spent it where it belonged. What I wrote to Patricia was simpler than that. I told her that I knew who she was. I told her that my husband was gone. I told her that I had read his letter, not the one he'd written to her, but one I found addressed to her undelivered among his things. I told her I was not writing to threaten or accuse or ask for anything. I told her that I had spent 43 years loving a man I now understood I had not fully known, and I imagined she was sitting somewhere feeling a version of that same thing. I told her I was sorry for her loss because whatever else was true, she had lost someone too. I told her I didn't expect a response and that she didn't owe me one. She responded anyway, 6 weeks later. A single handwritten page, careful and brief. She said she had not known about me for the first 3 years. She said that by the time she understood the full truth, she had already loved him, and that she was ashamed of what she had chosen to do with that knowledge. She said she had never wanted to take anything from me. She said she hoped I could believe that, even if she understood if I couldn't. I believed her, not entirely. You can't entirely believe someone you'll never fully know. But enough. I believed her enough. I put her letter in a shoebox on the shelf in my closet, on the top, where I can find it if I need to. I don't take it down often. Spring came. The rose bush by the mailbox bloomed again, the way it always does, indifferent to everything that has happened inside the house since the last time. I planted tomatoes in the raised beds Gerald built 6 years ago. I started taking a walk every morning, something I had meant to do for years and never found time for, because I was busy being part of a life I thought I understood. Marcus calls every Sunday. We are careful with each other in a new way, and I think that carefulness is something we will have to grow through rather than around. My daughter calls every Wednesday. She didn't know about Patricia. I asked Marcus, and he told me he'd kept it from her too, which was the first decision he made in all of this that I understood. My daughter would not have been quiet about it. She gets that from me. What I know now that I didn't know then, you can love someone for 43 years and still not have the whole of them. That's a hard thing to hold. I hold it every day. What I also know, my name is on the deed. My name is on every account. I built this life the same as he did, and it is mine as much as it was ever his, and no letter in any shoebox changes that. I am 67 years old. I wake up every morning in the house I have lived in for 31 years, and I make my coffee and I watch the birds and I exist completely and solidly in my own life, and I am learning, slowly, on my own terms, what it means to know myself without the shape of someone else around me. It is quieter than I expected. Some mornings, it is almost peaceful. I keep a notebook on the kitchen table now. I write in it when something occurs to me that I want to remember. Not journal entries, not grand thoughts, just observations, small things. The way the light comes through the window over the sink at 7 in the morning. The first day the tomatoes have color. The sound of the neighborhood just before it wakes up. Gerald never knew I wanted to do this. I never told him. I kept parts of myself folded away too, in my own way, in spaces I didn't know how to open. I think that's the truest thing I can tell you about a long marriage. You both end up carrying things you meant to put down, and you never find the right moment. I found a second address book 2 months ago, cleaning out the last of his filing cabinet. Nothing in it that changed anything. Just names, some of which I recognized and some I didn't. I put it in the recycling, stood at the bin for a moment. Then I closed the lid and went back inside. The coffee was still warm.